Hotel rooms are just naturally creepy places. I mean, how many people have slept in that bed before you? How many of them were sick? How many were losing their minds? How many were perhaps thinking about reading a few final verses from the Bible in the drawer of the nightstand beside them, and then hanging themselves in the closet beside the TV? Stephen King. Hotels are places with a rich and varied history. Years that have passed have seen hundreds of owners, as well as thousands of workers and guests pass through their doors. Hotels can be strange and creepy places with their never-ending, dimly lit hallways and rows of locked doors. Who is there, hiding behind those doors? What secrets do they hold? Today, as guests wander through ornately decorated entrance halls, they enter a place with a rich and fascinating past. More than just a place to rest, their lodgings offer a portal into a bygone age and a keeper of memories from years past. But there are more than just traces of history lying within the walls. There are also whispered stories and unexplained happenings. In today's documentary, we will be looking at some of these haunted hotels from around the world. Hotels with tales of mysterious deaths, murder, and despair, where we meet some of the dead people who are determined to leave their mark on the living. Those who have checked in but never checked out. First, let us travel to Northern Europe, where we visit 3 Scandinavian countries and their haunted hotels. Dragsholm Slot is located on the same island as the country's capital city, Copenhagen. The first thing to note about the luxury hotel is that it is very old and started its life as a castle, built by the Bishop of Roskilde around 1215. Having such a lengthy history, it's not surprising that Dragsholm has its fair share of ghosts. Our first is the bishop himself. He was imprisoned in the castle when it was seized by the Danish king. Being a man of the cloth, rather than being kept in the dungeons, he was placed in one of the cells at the center of the castle. Those cells are now hotel rooms, and guests who stay there often complain of moaning and wailing coming from the rooms and the hallways there. Another ghost that haunts the hotel is the Earl of Bothwell, the 3rd husband of Mary, Queen of Scots. He escaped to Denmark during the conflict over the crown of Scotland. He was caught and imprisoned in appalling conditions by King Frederick II. Bothwell was chained to a pillar for the last 10 years of his life and left to rot. His ghost has been seen wandering forlornly in the hotel courtyard, and horse hooves can be heard when his apparition appears riding in a carriage. A haunted hotel wouldn't be the same without the ghost of some spectral lady. Dragsholm Slot has 2. The kindly gray lady walks the hallways looking for people to help, but the story of the white lady is very sad. She was a noblewoman named Selina Bovels. Already engaged to be married to a nobleman, she became pregnant by a common worker at the castle and was punished by her angry father with imprisonment. He had her walled up in the castle and left to die. The specter of Selina walks around the hotel crying and wailing in agony as she searches for her lost lover. In the 1930s, when work was being done to modernize the plumbing, a skeleton was found behind a wall in an underground room at Dragsholm. Could this have been poor Selina? Hotel Bilan, Sweden. In 1882, the social worker and philanthropist Ebba Ramsey opened up the Victoria Home for mentally and physically challenged children in Jönköping, southern Sweden. Later, in 1903, Victoria became a school. And then, in the 1940s, the Swedish National Radio was broadcast from there. It has been a hotel since the 1990s, but it seems that Ebba has not been able to leave her old home. Guests who have stayed there claim to have felt the presence of someone sitting on the end of the bed. The spooky phenomena seems to center around rooms 426, 427, and 28 which are in the attic area of the hotel. Other guests have heard the sound of footsteps, as though someone is walking across newspapers. Hotel staff feel as though they are being watched and have witnessed unusual events like the moving around of cleaning products by an unseen hand. No one knows why Ebba is still haunting the hotel. Dalen Hotel, Norway. The Dalen has been described as a fairy tale hotel. With its majestic Viking architecture and stunning location at the end of the Telemark Canal, it's easy to see why. The canal, described as a technological marvel at that time, was completed in 1892, and the Dalen Hotel was built 2 years later to accommodate the royal and distinguished guests who traveled from across the globe to see the canal, described as one of the 8 wonders of the world. But fairy tales can quickly turn into nightmares when the ghostly cries of a baby can be heard all night coming from one of the rooms. At the turn of the 20th century, an English woman named Miss Greenfield checked into the Dalen, and in room 17 she gave birth to a baby. When she was not seen for a few days, staff forced the door to her room and found the dead child. No one knows whether the poor baby died from natural causes or was murdered. However, there was no sign of Miss Greenfield, who was later arrested in England for her crime, but died by suicide before she could stand trial. The cries of a ghostly baby are often heard coming from room 17, and a spectral Miss Greenfield has been seen around the hotel so much that a place is always set for her at one of the dinner tables, just in case. The Langham, England. Now we'll stay in Europe, but travel further west to the United Kingdom and visit its 4 countries. Opened in 1865 and located in London's West End, the Langham is the epitome of Victorian opulence. Marketed as the capital's most luxurious hotel, its innovative hydraulic lifts and in-room water closets meant that the hotel attracted only the best clientele. Its rich history of celebrity guests included the likes of Mark Twain, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Oscar Wilde, and the first French president Napoleon III. It was even thought that Wallis Simpson and her paramour Prince Edward had secret trysts there. An apparition of a Victorian gentleman wearing a cloak and cravat has been sighted in room 333 on several occasions. In 1973, a guest described seeing a bright ball of light that morphed into the apparition of a silver-haired man with black holes for eyes. It is thought to be the ghost of a doctor who brutally murdered his wife on their honeymoon before taking his own life. Other ghosts include Napoleon III, who spent a lot of time there during his exile from France. His spirit has been seen in the basement area of the hotel by several members of staff. There is a German prince wearing a military-style coat who walks through doors in the early hours of the morning, and a disfigured man with a gaping wound on his cheek who haunts the hallways. Another phantom from room 333 likes to shake the guest's bed, sometimes with such force that they are tipped out onto the floor. There is also a butler with holes in his socks who roams the corridors, and a footman in a powdered wig and pale blue livery who is accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature whenever he appears. The Skirid Mountain in Wales. At over 900 years old, the Skirid claims to be Wales's oldest pub, and with a history so long, how could it not be haunted? It stands just north of the market town of Abergavenny in the southeast county of Monmouthshire. Legend has it that the inn, which has several guest rooms, was once used as a court of law, where the sentence of capital punishment was often given out for several offenses, including sheep stealing. Up to as many as 180 criminals are thought to have been hanged in the inn itself, from an oak beam over a well in the staircase. Markings still exist in the wood, which are said to have been made from the rope. One of the ghosts who has appeared to guests is that of the Welsh judge John Jeffreys, who was known as the Hanging Judge. There is also the specter of a former hangman who appears as a black, malevolent mass lurking about on the staircase. The ghost that is experienced the most is that of Fanny Price. Her grave can be seen about 300 meters up the road from the inn. Fanny was thought to be a young mother when she died sometime in the 1800s, and the strong smell of lavender always accompanies her spirit. Sometimes when women have taken off their jewelry to go to sleep, Fanny rearranges it into pretty shapes during the night. One landlord once saw the figure of a man in a long red coat with a tricorn hat, and his 4-year-old grandson complained that he couldn't go to the toilet because a man in a long dress wouldn't let him. The inn was empty at the time. One woman ran downstairs dripping with water and with just a coat over herself. She was badly shaken and swore that a woman had been trying to hold her under while she was taking a bath. Other ghosts include a priest and a hanging victim, while paranormal activity includes whispering, disembodied footsteps, and the sensation of being strangled experienced by guests while walking up the stairs. Cathedral House Hotel, Scotland, over the English border and into Scotland, where we find our next hotel in the city of Glasgow. The beautiful Cathedral House has a fascinating history. Built in 1896, it was originally a hostel for female offenders released from the nearby Duke Street prison. The prison held women from all over Scotland, including many suffragettes and political prisoners. In 1955, after protests over living conditions, the prison was finally closed down and demolished 3 years later. The only remaining structure is the boundary wall. Cathedral House was then passed on to Glasgow Cathedral and was used for choir practice and Sunday school. The house was renovated in 2018 and turned into the hotel that it is today. Many of the women who found themselves at Cathedral House will have been traumatized by the events that brought them there, the crimes they had committed, and the time spent at Duke Street, which was notorious for housing dangerous women. Guests at the hotel have spoken of invisible hands touching their arms and seeing shadow-like figures. Children have been heard playing on the top floor, and many people have felt a presence brush past them on the stairs and heard their giggles. It is said that the children's mother was finally reunited with them at the halfway house after spending a long stretch in Duke Street prison. She drowned them in the bathtub rather than face the prospect of ever being parted from them again. Ballygally Castle Hotel, Northern Ireland. We now sail across the Irish Sea to the village of Ballygally in Antrim, overlooking Ballygally Bay. This hotel was once a castle and has a ghost that has been in residence for over 400 years. Built in 1625 by John Shaw of Greenock, Shaw rented the land from the Earl of Antrim for £24 a year. The walls are at least 5 feet thick, and there are musket openings or loops, so that those inside could defend the castle. A stream ran through the outer hall, which proved a great advantage in times of siege. It was especially valuable during the Irish Rebellion of 1641. It is Lady Isabel Shaw who is thought to have haunted the residence for over 400 years. Isabel was the wife of Lord James Shaw. He wanted a male heir, and when Isabel delivered a baby girl, Lord James snatched the newborn away from her and locked Isabel away in a small room at the top of one of the turrets. Tormented by the cries of her newborn daughter and desperate from starvation, Isabel squeezed herself through one of the windows, but plunged to her death, her body smashed onto the rocks below. The ghost of Isabel has been heard wandering the corridors at night, knocking on doors in search of her child. Many people have experienced strange activity in and around the hotel. An eerie green mist has been seen hovering above the castle, and guests have reported the feeling of a presence in their rooms. One couple, who stopped over at the hotel for a coffee break with their young baby, were lucky enough to be allowed to visit the turret room, along with another German couple, who were tourists. They went up the spiral staircase and entered the ghost room with the use of a huge iron key. On entering, the baby, who had been giggling and cooing happily, now became hysterical with terror and could not be soothed. The four adults could not get out of the room quickly enough and hurried back down the winding staircase without looking back. The Shelburne Hotel, the Republic of Ireland. Now south across the border, where we visit a 5-star luxury hotel that stands on St. Stephen's Green in the center of the historic city of Dublin. Over one 6-month period, as many as 2 to 3 guests a week were complaining of paranormal activity at the Shelburne, some even running from one particularly eerie room in a terrified panic to say that the bath was filling up on its own or the shower had turned itself on. Because there were so many reports of otherworldly activity going on in room 265, one of the staff members was asked to sleep there and tried to find out what was really going on. The staff member emerged from the room as white as a sheet and quite shaken up because of sink and bath taps constantly turning on of their own accord. The poltergeist activity is thought to be caused by the spirit of Mary Masters, a mischievous little girl who was only 7 when she died from cholera in 1791. The occult author and psychic Sybil Leek said she had contacted Mary's spirit when she was staying in one of the hotel rooms on the 5th floor. In 2013, the actor Lily Collins believed that she encountered Mary's giggling ghost when she stayed at the Shelburne. Another staff member admitted that he often felt the presence of a supernatural companion when walking along the long hallways, adding that he had seen shadows and stuff. Another guest also mentioned that he saw the ghost of a young girl in his room, opening and closing the wardrobe doors. Spooky! The Bespro Hotel, Canada. Across the pond from Ireland lies North America, a continent with more than its fair share of haunted hotels. The Bes stands in the central business district of Saskatoon, the largest city in the province of Saskatchewan. The building is considered to be one of Canada's grand railway hotels. The hotel opened in 1935 and was designed like a French chateau, with further inspiration taken from the castles of Bavaria, and it really does look like something out of a storybook. The 225-room hotel has 4 spots where paranormal activity has been witnessed. Our first visit is to the Adam Ballroom, where many guests have experienced meeting the distinguished-looking man who wears a gray fedora. He greets everyone with a friendly hello, but when staff have been questioned about the man wearing the dated suit, they are informed that they have probably just met one of the resident ghosts. It is thought that he was the manager of the hotel, or at least an employee, because of the events which led to his death. One night, he confronted 2 drunken men who were causing trouble and asked them to keep quiet or leave the premises. They responded by throwing the man over the balcony, where he fell almost 7 stories onto the floor below. There is still a crack in the marble, a chilling reminder of the tragic event that led to such a needless loss of life. Other guests have seen a man in a gray suit walking through the banquet room, which was once the terrace lounge. The lounge was an area where guests could meet, send letters, and read the paper. It is thought that the gray man is searching for his friends. The apparition on the 3rd floor is not as friendly, though. The woman seems benign enough. She is said to be small, her hair and clothing disheveled, and she seems tired and depressed. But woe betide anyone who approaches her as she runs up to them and screams in their face before disappearing. The final ghost at the Bes is thought to be a bellman who haunts a stairwell. He was running down the stairs while carrying some luggage when he tripped and tumbled to his death. The apparition appears on the spot where a section of marble is missing from the staircase, and it's thought that is where he fell. La Fonda on the Plaza, USA. La Fonda is known for being built on the site of Santa Fe's very first inn when the city was founded by Spaniards in 1607. The location has a long and distinguished history and was the main stopping point on the 800-mile Santa Fe Trail linking New Mexico to Missouri. During the 19th century, all sorts of lodgers passed through its doors, from soldiers to gamblers, trappers to gold miners. When a hotel burned down on the site in 1912, funds were raised and a new structure was built in 1922. The design included a 25-foot cathedral ceiling, stained glass skylights, and hand-carved beams. It is the spirit of Judge John P. Slough that is thought to haunt the lobby of the hotel after he was shot and killed there during a deadly argument in 1867. Some guests have reported hearing his heavy footsteps pacing back and forth in the hallways late at night and have seen his ghost wearing a long, black coat. Some have seen the spirit of a heavy-drinking businessman who ended his life when he gambled away everything he owned at the hotel. He ran into the courtyard and jumped into the well, head first. Both staff and guests have reported seeing the figure of a man who walks into the center of the restaurant and then just disappears. This is the exact spot where the well used to be. In the wedding suite, room 510, the lobby, elevator, and basement, the spirit of a young woman has been seen. She is said to be a bride who was murdered on the eve of her wedding by her ex-beau. And there are countless other reports of paranormal occurrences at La Fonda. The shape of a person lying beneath the bedclothes when no one was there, a spectral cowboy, disembodied footsteps and voices, and orbs are just some of the phenomena that have been reported in this extraordinary hotel. Castello della Castellucha Hotel, Italy. Back across the Atlantic in southern Europe, we find another fairy tale venue. The Castello is in the countryside just north of one of the world's most ancient cities, Rome. The building has been passed down through the hands of many aristocratic families over the centuries, including the Orsinis, Mutis, and Odelscanis, and has been welcoming guests since the 12th century. Lying not far from the tomb of the mad Emperor Nero, his specter is often seen wandering around the hotel grounds. Guests have also heard the ghostly sound of horses galloping outside the hotel at night. So the legend goes, the horses were sent to Castello by a lord as payment for a gambling debt. On arrival at the castle, the horses mysteriously died, and their spirits still roam around the countryside near the hotel. The apparition of a 17th century alchemist has also been seen wandering around the hallways and rooms. He died when the tower was struck by lightning. Chateau de Brissac, France. Across the border and onto the Loire region of western France. Originally built by the Counts of Anjou in the 11th century, the chateau is now open to the public and has overnight stays in its guest rooms. Brissac has 7 floors and is known as the tallest chateau in France. It is also famous for the presence of a resident ghost known as Dame Verte, or the Green Lady, a woman actually named Charlotte de Braise. Charlotte was the illegitimate daughter of King Charles VII of France and his mistress Agnes Sorel. Her marriage to the nobleman Jacques de Braise was a political one, and there was no love between the couple. In May of 1477, Jacques returned home from a hunting trip and retired for the evening. He was called by a servant and told that his wife was having an affair with a man named Pierre de la Vergne. Jacques caught the couple together, and in a fit of jealous rage, he brutally murdered them both. Charlotte has been seen wearing her beautiful green dress, wandering the corridors at night, often in the chapel tower. Her presence has terrified many people over the years because her spectral face has no eyes or nose, which perhaps reflects what was done to her when she was killed. Visitors and staff have also been unsettled by her mournful cries, especially in the early hours of the morning as she searches the rooms for her murdered lover. It is said that her husband Jacques soon moved out of the chateau after the murder, as he could not bear to listen to his wife's spectral wails. Parador de Cardona y Parador de Jaén. In 1928, the Spanish government decided to create a state-owned chain of luxury hotels. Most of them are located inside historic buildings such as castles, former hospitals, fortresses, and mansions. And we all know that historic buildings usually have a lot of ghostly activity. Parador de Cardona in Catalonia doesn't disappoint when it comes to spirits. The former castle has more than one haunted room. Many centuries ago, the Duke of Cardona invited the Berber Prince Abdullah from North Africa to a party at the castle. Whilst walking in the garden during the celebrations, the prince met and fell in love with Adela, the Duke's daughter. The pair began to meet secretly. The problem was that Prince Abdullah was a Muslim, and Adela and her family were Catholic. No one was ever going to approve, so the couple planned to run away together. Their plan was discovered, and the Duke imprisoned his daughter in one of the towers. She was given only bread and water for weeks as her father tried to break her spirit. Poor Adela was allowed no visitors and eventually died there from a broken heart. The ghost of a young girl has been seen wandering the hotel at night. She wears a white dress. Could this be Adela still searching for her handsome prince? Room 712 has experienced some poltergeist activity, and furniture has been known to move around all by itself, sometimes being pulled into the center of the room at night. Hotel Parador de Jaén in Andalusia is also a former castle. Here, it's room 22, now room 401, that is haunted by the spirit of a young woman. One guest claimed to have been woken by someone banging on the door to his room and the sounds of a woman crying. Others have experienced strange occurrences in the room with moving furniture, shadow figures, sudden drops in temperature, and suitcases being opened by an unseen hand. Some say that it is the presence of Jasmina, the Muslim mistress of the Lord Constable of Castello. She was pregnant and becoming too much of an influence and distraction on the Lord, so King Enrique IV had her killed. Cruelly, he sent men to storm the castle and burn Yasmina alive. Some people have seen her spirit outside in the hallway. The ghost of a man who was starved to death while being kept prisoner at the castle was nicknamed Lagarto Terrible, or Terrible Lizard. He wanders around the hotel haunting the place. His name suggests some sort of horrible phantasm, but Lagarto is, in fact, quite harmless, although he has been known to possess guests from time to time, just for fun. Further north and into Eastern Europe, we find 3 hotels in Russia that have had more than their fair share of creepy incidents. The Hotel National, Moscow. The National opened in 1903 and is one of the most luxurious hotels in Moscow. It has hosted thousands of guests over the years. Some well-known names have stayed there, including the composer Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov, the prima ballerina Anna Pavlova, and the English writer Herbert Wells. In the aftermath of the Russian Revolution, the capital of Russia was moved to Moscow, and the hotel became home to the first Soviet government in 1918. Because the Kremlin was damaged during the fighting in October 1917, the Russian head of government, Vladimir Lenin, lived at the National with his wife for a week in room 107. It seems that Lenin enjoyed his stay there so much that he likes to return in ghostly form. The phantom figure of a bald man with a beard is often seen sipping tea or walking the hallways and messing about with the lighting. Grand Hotel Europe, St. Petersburg. Opened in 1875 on Art Square, this five-star hotel boasts stained glass windows, marble floors, sweeping staircases, and high stucco ceilings. The hotel is said to have been built on the site of an earlier lodge in 1706. Guests were visited by the ghost of Officer Belyaev Tolstoy, who had been murdered in the attic room. The building was plagued with disembodied footsteps, moans, and whines. The inn was demolished and replaced by the hotel, but the previous ghost moved in, and the paranormal activity continued. The specter of the officer has even been mistaken for a porter. Hotel Angleterre, St. Petersburg. The first hotel on this site was built in 1840. The Russian writer Leo Tolstoy was a frequent guest there. It was rebuilt and refurbished in 1911, with 75 rooms and shops on the ground floor. In 1919, after the Russian Revolution, the name was changed to Hotel International before returning to the original name in 1925. The same year that the famous Russian poet Sergei Yesenin hanged himself in room number 5. It is his ghost that is said to haunt the building. Some believe he did not take his own life but was killed, and it was covered up. Perhaps that is why his soul has not found peace and cannot leave. The Chateau Tongerro, New Zealand. Finally, we head down under to meet some Antipodean spooks. In 1925, the New Zealand government offered to lease land and lend up to £40,000 to any company that was willing to build and operate a hotel at the newly opened Tongerro National Park. The park is the oldest in New Zealand and is located in the central North Island. The hotel was built at the base of one of 3 active volcanoes in the park and was modeled on the Canadian resort of Lake Louise. It is a neo-Georgian structure of 4 stories with a basement. Skiing tourist numbers declined during World War II, so in 1942, the chateau was appropriated by the health department as an asylum when the Wairarapa earthquakes damaged Pororua Psychiatric Institution in Wellington. Patients had to be evacuated when Ruapehu erupted in 1945. Then, the hotel was used as a rest and recuperation center for returning World War II Air Force personnel. Staff at the hotel spoke of seeing the apparition of a nurse called Charlotte, who had died in one of the rooms. With many suicides having taken place there, is it any wonder that the hotel was a hotbed for eerie activities such as curtains and furniture, moving of their own accord, doors opening and closing, disembodied whispering, cold spots, unnatural moaning, and chilling screams. Sadly, Chateau Tongerro Hotel had to close in 2023 because the building is under significant seismic risk. Royal Hotel Seymour, Australia. The Royal was one of the first buildings to be built in Seymour, a town located in the southeastern state of Australia. The hotel has had more than a varied past. At one time, it was a courthouse and a jail. It has even been the town morgue, so it has a history of many weird guests. The hallways of the Royal are home to ghostly footsteps. An invisible band can be heard playing at the end of the ballroom, and the cries of a long-dead baby are heard coming from the old morgue. A poltergeist tips over glasses or throws them across the bar, and whispers come from the empty courtyard. Staff are wary to go into room number 5, which is thought to be the most haunted, and the spine-chilling screams of frightened horses have been heard coming from the stables, where it is said they tragically perished during a stable fire.